Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Way T Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today we have Sarah Glicken, who is the co-founder of OsteoStrong LA, a biohacking wellness center focusing on strengthening bones, joints, and muscles. After a successful career in marketing and sales with more than 2 decades of experience in music, design, and hospitality, she left to pursue her passion as a champion of health optimization. As a pro-aging advocate, she guides others in discovering new ways to age gracefully through technology, mindset, and supplementation. Sarah holds a master in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica and is a certified holistic health coach. It is her strong belief that everyone deserves to live in a healthy body. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the great introduction.
You know, we were chatting earlier and you dropped a bomb of a fact on us. 54 million people are suffering from osteoporosis, a degenerative and debilitating condition that really takes a lot away from our lives. I can think of when as a child, I dealt with senior citizens a lot and people who are aging, and one of the big fears was if I fall and break my hip, or mobility issues and the degenerative conditions. I had an aunt who suffered from osteoporosis, and the last part of her life was seriously compromised and certainly anxiety ridden because of that condition. How did you become so passionate in this area, and how that became your mission in life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but first let me correct. So it's 54 million people in the US have bone density issues in general.
Right.
So that's a combination of osteoporosis
Right.
and osteopenia, just to be clear, since
Yes.
misinformation
Correct.
is really big right now.
We get labeled as, God knows, information terrorists.
Exactly. So, you know, how I got into it is interesting. I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I, as like a hippie kid, so
Okay,
from
cool.
parents that were in New York in the 60s and moved to Santa Fe.
Which I understand is an amazing city for that sort of creative, artistic expression.
Totally. It's a beautiful, mystical, magical, amazing place. I'm super grateful to have grown up in a place like that. But so from a really young age, I was just shown all of the opportunities to support health and healing outside of sort of the allopathic medicine space.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that was kind of how it all started, was just in my upbringing, right? So I was born in this sort of hippie family where we were eating organic before that was like a thing. And that I just grew up like understanding what proper nourishment in my body did for me and how healing it was, as well as like, you know, I was around a lot of alternative healers doing all kinds of crazy stuff back in the day. And then as it happened, both of my parents went through cancer journeys, and I was caregiver to both of them, and they both died. And I just had, even though I loved what I did in the marketing space and I worked with a lot of really great companies, I just knew that I wanted to do something where I could make more of an impact in the world and where I could help people. And I hadn't found it yet. And that was really clear to me. And I was really into personal growth work and went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. So I was already revved up with a fire in my belly. And then on the last day of that event, have you ever been to UPW?
Yep, I've done that. And I also have done...
Date with Destiny?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
Yeah,
so you know the Tony world.
I'm very familiar with the Tony world.
So on the last day is like where they do everything is about health that day. And one of the things that they talk about on stage is this product called OsteoStrong, which is this technology that strengthens bones. And I don't have anything in my history that would lead me to like be passionate about that space. But but I just got like this immediate yes from the universe. Like I heard it spoken on stage by the CEO of the company who started the parent company of OsteoStrong. And I said, this is amazing. And this is a way that I can make a meaningful impact in the world. And so that was in November 2017. And I opened my first location of OsteoStrong in April 2018.
Wow, that's a very short period of time.
Yeah,
so that's
massive action. You know, Tony.
Yeah. You need to take massive action.
Yes. I'm a gladiator.
Yeah. I will not stop. Thanks, Tony, for all your contributions, by the way. And of course, Tony, what's fascinating is Tony has like super intense bone density because of all the jumping and clapping he's done.
Yeah. But he also has like borderline gigantism because he's like 6'8" and has had a lot of issues with like his back and he credits a lot of his ability to like be on stage for 12, 14, 18 hours at a time to using OsteoStrong to help with eliminating joint and back pain in his body and keeping his just sort of foundational strength there, because that's the other part of what the product does.
Well, I think that you indicated something I think that's really important, and let's kind of rewind for our listeners when we're talking about what are the negative effects and maybe what are the points that you need to start concerning yourself about the loss of bone density. And some people are more susceptible than others. And interesting enough, what I've noticed is in the digital age, people are far more susceptible to bone density issues. And part of that's cortisol and blue light and
lack of movement.
And lack of movement, lack of weight-bearing exercises, all these type of things. It's seriously an issue. Can you maybe point out the picture or flesh out the picture of bone degeneration and its impact on their quality of life and why that is happening so much in our society?
Absolutely. So we build bone in our bodies and build really strong bone, which is a living tissue, up until around age 30. And that's when we reach peak bone mass. So probably most people don't even know that after age 30, we're all starting to lose bone mass at different levels, right? Mm-hmm. So the things that can affect it are, of course, genetic propensity towards it. Like there are certain people that have a tendency towards, and that tends to be, it's more of considered a female disease, but it's not exclusively. Mm-hmm. And a lot of thinner cultures, so thin white women, a lot of Asian cultures, Japanese, Chinese, have higher propensity towards high levels of bone loss. Mm-hmm. But then other things affect it that we don't even think about, like people who have eating disorders when they're young, right? Because their nutrient absorption is so poor, so their bone health really suffers. So we've seen people in our center who are like in their 20s who have bone density issues. Also, significant hypothyroidism, so people taking Synthroid, that can affect it. People having taken high doses of steroids through their lives, and then breast cancer survivors, because the chemo can also affect. But it's a pretty staggering, like 50% of women and 33% of men over 50 will have a fracture. So it's a pretty high number. When
you're talking about bone density, just in numbers, because I get my bone density mineral tests on Dexa scans and things like that, what is a typical healthy range, and what is a range where you're starting to run into trouble, and then what is a reasonable loss as we age, and something that's a warning sign?
Yeah. So what we consider to be in a Dexa scan, the average, the mean is based off of a healthy 30-year-old, which of course, I mean, the Dexa scan is like the gold standard in measuring bone density, but it doesn't.
There's a lot of variables that it's not covering, and I think a lot of people overemphasize some of the information. It's a generalized directional component, but it's not as absolute as people might think.
And the technician, the piece of equipment that you're using, they all play a major role in the results that you can have. Your results can vary 5 to 10% if you're doing a scan on one machine and then another machine. So we're all losing 1 to 2% a year. And then women in menopause tend to lose 5 to 6%. But during the menopause time, they can lose like 20% of their bone density.
Really? So what, in other words, we see this happen for women who enter into menopause. Sometimes there's rapid shifts in their physiology and, you know, their health, their vitality. Like it all of a sudden, it just kind of falls off a cliff.
Yep.
Why is that, and how does that impact bone health?
So why is that? That would be a really good question for a scientist who really understands.
Right. It just is.
It just is that we as women have a higher rate of decline as we age, as we're losing estrogen in our bodies. But then there are a lot of other factors that play into it, like what our vitamin D levels are, our calcium absorption. When I was a kid, it was like drink milk, and it was all about calcium and taking enough calcium. And then what we've really grown to understand is that it's more about absorption of calcium into the body and actually just taking calcium on its own without understanding the whole picture of the body and like magnesium levels, vitamin D levels. You can actually take too much calcium and then you can see like calcification in the bones.
And that creates the opposite effect. You start dropping calcium because your magnesium-calcium ratio is out of whack.
Right.
Or you don't have enough sunlight or D3 present in the body for absorption issues. You know, we're all about absorption.
Yes.
You know, so we say it's not what you eat, it's what you digest, absorb, and utilize. And a lot of these low-grade or low-resolution solutions that have been propagated onto the population over the last 80 years.
And then I would
are really hurting people, you know, because people think, hey, I'm taking my XYZ vitamin, or I'm getting extra calcium because I, you know, ate this vitamin-enriched white bread.
Yeah. But I think, and then if we take it to a whole other level, which is why I'm launching this new sort of a coaching program that is a physician-guided coaching program around bone health, is that and especially in the allopathic medical world, I mean, I'm so grateful for the role of doctors in my life and in you know what they are here to do. But what is true is that they are taught to prescribe and to diagnose and to cut are the primary things that they're taught. That's obviously oversimplification of it all. But what we need to be looking at is like the whole body and the whole person, right? So we don't think about like, how does sleep gonna affect our bone health? How is nutrition, just what we're eating on a regular basis, how is stress gonna affect everything? I mean, I know for myself, when I'm under high levels of stress, I can see immediately what it's doing to my physical body and how it's either helping or hindering what's going on. And I think that it's time that we start looking at the whole system and kind of what we can do on all levels. Like we look at these different pillars of like sustenance. So like what we're eating, right? Then supplementation. So what can we be taking? What stimulus can we have, like OsteoStrong, or as well as what we're doing out in the world in terms of exercise, and then stress. So that's sleep, stress, and how all of those things are going to affect us. And we need to be looking at all of them. We see pretty stupendous results in everyone's bone density increasing at OsteoStrong, but it's not the whole picture either, you know? So we have to be looking at the whole body.
So when you talk about reversing these trends, so what I love about OsteoStrong, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what that program is your typical client comes in, maybe they've gotten a diagnosis from a medical doctor, or there's a genetic pattern or whatever that says, I'm susceptible, or I'm heading down bone degeneration thing that's going to run into some complications. Is that the type of person that comes to your?
Yes, so it's either that or it's athletes. So we have a lot of athletes who come in either for injury prevention or we've got a lot of ex-pro athletes who come in
Right.
because they have had so many injuries. They've got a lot of joint and dysfunction and pain in their bodies that they're looking to mitigate and to strengthen. And then we can help with athletic performance as well. But I would say 70% of our client base is people with bone density issues.
Got it. So someone that comes in, how does this work? Like, hey, what is a count that's dangerous on bone density? Because I get these little things that says, oh, it's 7.8 or 7.9 or.
Yes, so that's not going to be, so what we're looking at is the T-score on a Dexa scan.
Yeah.
And 0 is like the
Can you explain what the T-score is for our listeners?
Yes, so that is bone mineral density
Yeah.
in your body. And so what we're looking at is the average bone mineral density of a healthy 30-year-old, which they count as the 0, okay?
Yep.
And then as it goes down, you get into the osteopenic range, which is in the 0 down to minus 1.5. And then below that is considered osteoporosis.
Okay, can you explain those terminologies? What the difference between them means?
So osteoporosis basically means porous bones, right?
Yeah.
And so the osteopenic range is that range where your bones are starting to have issues,
Yeah.
but they're not down to a level that they would consider that you would need to take medication or to
Right.
mitigate the loss at some level.
And what are some of the medications that people are taking, and what's the potential side effects for these things? Because I think a lot of people just don't understand.
Yes, so bisphosphonate drugs are the primary things that are prescribed for bone density. And there are some people who find some benefit from using them. There are a lot of side effects from them, including some of those. There are different ones that you take like a shot a couple times a year, or there's
Right.
some that you take as a pill. But some of them can create things like your jaw becomes very fragile, so that they recommend that you no longer have extensive dental work after you start doing them, because
Wow.
your jaw could fracture.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yes.
Holy.
So there are so many side effects that people experience from them, and this is purely my feeling around them, because I'm not big on
Yep.
on taking pharmaceuticals in general.
Yeah.
But what they do is they're not actually getting to the root of the problem. What they're doing is they're creating kind of like a candy coating around the bone that makes it sort of seem to be slightly stronger. It's not rebuilding the actual bone so that your bone itself becomes stronger, because since bone is living and it can be remodeled under high impact force, and we know that from Wolff's Law, which every doctor studies from the 1800s, which says that high impact force can remodel bone.
And this is something I think a lot of people are not. People think of bones as these like hard steel-like structures inside your body that get fractured, but they're living dynamic aspects which produce blood cells and all sorts of different things, in our bodies. And I would think that sealing them up with a drug might not be the best answer over the long term.
Right?
And oftentimes, would you say that, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what percentage do you think of these debilitating conditions are lifestyle, and what percentage would be genetics? Is there a range there?
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others is a total game changer. Suddenly you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Well, either way, lifestyle is the way to impact that.
Yeah. I think that there are probably, I've never seen any studies on the difference in terms of percentages. I would say that frequently it's a combination of the two, of course. Yeah. But there are going to be people that have a higher propensity than others.
Of course.
Yeah. So gymnasts have the highest bone density on earth.
I know, they get like the forces that they do when they jump and go is insane.
Yeah. So it's been measured, and they can have as much as like 10 to 15 multiples of their body weight in force go through their bones at a time.
That's
so
crazy.
That's, and these teeny little people, right? Both the men and the women are generally pretty small in the gymnastics world.
Yeah.
It also has one of the earliest retirement ages of any sport. The average retirement age is 19 for gymnasts. And they tend to have a very high rate of knee, hip, shoulder replacements down the road.
Knee, hip, and ankles in that sport is really bad. I've almost all the gymnasts I know have knee and hip issues.
Yeah, exactly. So when John Jaquish was getting his PhD, he's an engineer, and his mom was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and she's European, and she's like, I'm not taking any drugs. But and the doctors were like, stop exercising, stop doing the things that you love, because we don't want you to fall and hurt yourself, which makes no sense to me.
Makes no sense, right?
And so John looked at it and he said, wait a second. Osteoporosis is a deconditioning of the bone. So if something is deconditioned, it should be able to be reconditioned.
Right.
And so he started researching, and he's like, okay, let's look at who has the highest bone density on earth. We already know Wolff's Law, which says that bone can regrow. And then let's look at who does that naturally. And he looked at gymnasts, and he looked at Olympic weightlifters, right?
Yep.
And he studied their ergonomic form of like, what position do you have to be in order to exert the absolute most force out of your body possible without risking injury? And like, how do they do it? So obviously, both of those can hurt themselves a lot, but for the most part, they've learned how to be in positions where they can absorb really high amounts of force in their body. So he literally studied the human body in terms of that and figured out like what is the optimal position in order to exert the most force out of the body possible. And then how can we put end-to-end compression on the bones to trigger what's called osteogenesis, which is the osteoblast, building new bone tissue.
So this became the foundation of the OsteoStrong program.
Yes.
And so when a person comes in, like this person, they finding out, hey, I've got this, osteopenia, osteoporosis, whatever, I'm on this directional thing, and I want to reverse that. They come in, and you put them on one of these OsteoStrong programs. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay, so what that involve? Does that involve? So what
so obviously, I should say that we don't treat, diagnose, or cure anything.
Of course. Yes.
But what we do is we support the natural process in the body to heal itself.
Yep.
And so what it looks like is, and which is why it is called a biohack, right, is that it is a way to receive maximum effort with minimum results. So it's literally a trigger for the brain to stimulate osteogenesis. So all we do, we have 4 pieces of equipment that each focus on a different body part. So there's one that's called the upper growth trigger that's focusing from shoulders down to elbows and elbows down to wrists. The second one is focusing on the lower body from hips to knees and knees to ankles. The third is for your core. So that's really looking primarily at rib cage and then deep abdominal muscles. And then the fourth is called the postural growth trigger, and that's looking at the spine and all the postural muscles. So it's a once a week modality.
Oh, wow.
Which is really interesting, right? Because similar to how muscle needs
rest time,
bone has needs longer rest time. The life cycle of bone is 5 to 7 days. So there's no benefit. It's been studied. John studied it, and there's no benefit in doing it more often than once a week. And the other part that's really interesting is there's no benefit in doing not hitting the stimulus that's needed to create osteogenesis and doing it like I can jump up and down 1,000 times, which will probably be good for my cardio. But if I'm not hitting the minimum stimulus needed to trigger osteogenesis in my body, it doesn't matter how many times I do it, it's not going to do it. So that's the other really unique part about this, is that you do each of these modalities once with the goal of hitting a specific trigger. So like what we know, the area of the body that's been studied most, of course, is the hip, right? Because of hip fractures.
Right.
And we know that you need 4.2 multiples of your body weight in force to trigger osteogenesis.
So for 120-pound woman, they would need how much?
Yeah, so they would need, 500 pounds.
And obviously you're going to need some specialized equipment. You can't just go out and put 500 pounds on your back and expect that you don't get
right.
So
you could jump off of this and I would probably get 500 pounds of force through my body, but that would strain my lower back.
Correct.
So what we're doing is we're eliminating the weak range of motion completely.
Yep.
So we're putting you in your strongest position.
Yep.
Where you can have the most force. I mean, you understand this as having done traditional weightlifting, right? So we can only push what we can push from back here if we're doing a bench press, but when we're out here is when we're at our strongest.
Right.
So we eliminate that weak range so that we put you in a position where you can exert the most force possible out of your body in order to stimulate those triggers. And what we see is that people are 7 times stronger in their strongest range than in their weakest range. So
makes sense.
I've been able to do my max on the lower growth trigger is 2,400 pounds of force. So
amazing.
Would I ever be able to do a leg press of 2,400 pounds? No way.
No.
But I'm able to do that and it feels good. And it's not only, the other interesting part about it is it's not only stimulating bone growth, but it's actually increasing the number of myofibrils in your muscle cells. Mm-hmm. So it's making your muscles denser. So it's not going to create larger muscles on the outside, but it's going to just increase your overall strength. So it's sort of like the chassis of a car, sort of making the whole foundation stronger so that then you can go lift heavier, run farther, not wind up with osteoporosis, all of the ways that it can support you in your body. Ideally, people are doing this for prevention as opposed to...
Right. And so let's talk about that so let's say a person, here we have a menopausal lady at 120 pounds comes in and she's in the thing. What are some of the reversals that you've seen, that people are heading down one path and, what are the reversals? What percentage can they change? How their trajectory change? What's the time frames involved to produce results?
Great question. So we've been open about 3 years, and we've seen over 100 people come back with Dexa scans heading back towards normal bone density.
Wow.
So a lot of them have gone from osteoporosis to osteopenia.
Wow.
And we've had a few go back to completely normal bone density.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting and really encouraging of the direction that is going.
What's that like for the client, that when they anytime you get a diagnosis, and it can be very scary and debilitating, and then when you can actually engage in a lifestyle alteration program and see progress, what's that like?
Yeah. Well, what I would like to know is what's it like when their doctor gives them the results in the doctor's office, because frequently I think the doctors are they're in shock because nothing has the ability to affect a change in bone density in the way that this meaningfully in this period of time, right? So frequently it's first the doctor is like, wow, that was a significant change in your bone density.
What have you been doing?
Exactly.
Right? That's usually the question next, right?
And I will say that on a human level, it's brought me to tears multiple times when I no longer am working there regularly, but when I was there all the time, just seeing these people coming in and their faces when they get their Dexa scan back, and they're realizing, because there's so much fear around it, frequently they saw a mother or a grandmother.
Yeah, because usually it's oftentimes it's also genetic predisposition. So there's probably a family member that they saw, break their hip, and a lot of times people's hip breaks before they fall. It's not the fall that breaks, and that's a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, and that the ribs are the most often fractured part of the body, and the most common way that the rib is fractured is from sneezing.
Wow.
Yes. So, and I think that what it comes down to, really, it's like getting down to people's why, because we hear someone saying, I want to increase my bone density, but really what it's about is, I want to be able to crawl on the floor with my grandkids when I get old, and be able to do it and get back up off of the floor and not be hurting. And I want to be able to go on a hike when someone invites me and not be afraid that I'm going to lose my balance and fall. And it's really about quality of life. It's not really about the number. Mm-hmm. But there does tend to be a lot of fear. And so instead, what we try to do is to help them future pace towards what is possible.
Do you think that it's possible for most people that may be predispositioned for bone density issues to stabilize that if they're following an OsteoStrong program?
Yes. And there are always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
We had someone who did not have good results. She probably had one of the highest stress jobs that I had seen. She was on a plane all the time, mm-hmm. had poor eating habits, very poor sleep. So, and she also didn't believe in it. So she came, but she started it and said, I don't think that this is going to work, but I'm going to try it.
Right.
So she kind of fit the perfect avatar of the person that it wasn't
resistant to the benefits, but for the most part, you're able to positively impact. And what's a timeline that's realistic for people to start to see progress?
A year.
So
I would say. Yeah. I mean, some people
coming
see
in once a week.
Come
in once a week. And how long is a session?
10 minutes.
Really? So they just come in for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Do the program and out the door again. Simple, easy. Well, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you advocate lifestyle changes or dietary changes or supplementation changes, anything like that?
Definitely. We also advocate, we have several other modalities that we are big proponents of, like PEMF technology. So we have PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency.
Got one of these here and one upstairs here at the Bio Home. Yeah, so I'm zapping. I call it the zappers.
Yeah. So we have a biocharger as well, which includes PEMF and Rife technology, along with light and sound, which is really wonderful. We have a full body red light panel. And then we also have Normatec compression boots, which are just really great for circulation, lymphatic system, obviously breaking up lactic acid for people who are athletic, but I was amazed at how many people love it who aren't athletes. It's just tired legs, getting your blood flowing. So we recommend doing all of those things as well as the OsteoStrong, but also, get your vitamin D levels checked, because that plays a crucial role in absorption of calcium, magnesium supplementation,
Yep.
and then eating a healthy diet. And the healthy diet for different people looks differently, right? We're not gonna, for some people.
Are there any things other than a stressful work environment that are the get out of your life kind of things?
Smoking,
Yep.
soda,
Yep.
both of those things. If anybody is on Synthroid, of course, they're probably on Synthroid because they need it. But if there's a way to naturally make changes to their thyroid and to get off of Synthroid, that would be another thing that can be really helpful for it.
What do you feel going from that UPW event to now you're 3 years or so into your journey as an advocate for this program? What is your mission and how do you see that unfolding in the next while?
That's a great question. So my mission really is about supporting others in what I like to call pro-aging, right?
Yep.
As we've always said anti-aging, but I'm like, I don't want to be anti-anything.
Right. I love that.
I want to be supporting, aging.
Age like a pro.
Yeah, age like a pro and feel good in my body as I age and feel like I got this no matter how old I am, and while simultaneously embracing the changes that we are all going through as we age, because those are real, right? Like I'm not going to recover in the same way that I did when I was 25, when I do a HIIT class or something. I just don't recover quite the same as I did. But the more I can embrace that, the better. I think as I move forward and in these next few years, I'm launching a couple of really exciting things to sort of round out the bone health support world with, I mentioned doing this coaching program, which is like an online program in support of whole body bone health and all of the things that we can do to support it, from supplementation to what we're eating to how we're stimulating it. So that's a big part of it. And just that goal of I want to be an advocate for people to, move through this life in a joyful, easeful way so that they feel good.
I'm with you on that. So Sarah, in closing, I have a couple things. I'd like to ask you if someone that's listening to this knows someone who has a predisposition for this or is suffering from one of these conditions or may have a genetic predisposition, what would you suggest that they do right now to take action? Because I always love to, hey, folks, it's not enough just to listen about this. It's not enough to hear about this. Get this message out to people. You can make a difference. You can change somebody's life. You can prevent a lifestyle of pain with something that could be much better than that. What would you suggest for them?
I would suggest a multi-pronged approach. If they live somewhere where there is an OsteoStrong location that they can go into and actually start a program, I would suggest that. There are 100 locations around the world that have this equipment that they can do that. But I would also, it's about empowering people to take control of their own health. So I would encourage everyone to have their vitamin D levels checked. We know how important vitamin D levels are for our immune system as well, but really vital in our bone health also. And to be supplementing, I would suggest that they all look at Magnesium Breakthrough and see how that can support their
It's been
health.
very helpful. I know a lot of people with bone density issues have loved that product and a variety of other things. It's such a deficient mineral.
Yes,
in
and
our society.
Full disclosure, I have been a user of the product for quite a while before we were introduced to each other and you invited me on here, which is, I love the product and I'm a huge fan of, it's been so helpful in my body.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and then as well, just really looking at the other things that they can do. How can you reduce stress? Are you eating a whole food diet? And are you surrounded by things that bring you joy? Because all of those things are going to support your overall health and well-being.
Where can people find you, find out more, get involved with your company and your mission?
Absolutely. So if you are in the Los Angeles area, you can find us on osteostrongla.com. And for around the country, osteostrong.me, you can find all the locations that exist everywhere. And I'll also be sharing, and maybe you can put it in the show notes, some more information about this bone health program that's going to be launching in the fall.
Yes, that would be great. And we will put all of that information in the show notes. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you're on a great mission, and we're delighted to support that as an advocate for better health and stronger bones.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. Be sure to refer this out to people. There's probably someone that you know that is suffering from osteopenia or osteoporosis. And as Sarah has indicated, you can make a difference and they can make a difference by implementing some of these lifestyle programs that can have a profound effect on their life. So why not do that? I want to thank Sarah for joining us. And if you like this, hit the like button, smash it, share it. Do whatever you like. Give us your comments. We all love that. I'm Wayne T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers, and that's the Awesome Health Podcast. Take care.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.